Surprise, a Benny Bear and Ruby Rabbit story. Winter had come to Fernwood Forest, covering everything in a thick blanket of snow. Trees wore icy coats, icicles dangled from branches, and the whole forest sparkled like a snow globe. Benny Bear peeked outside his cave and grinned. Perfect sledding weather. He bundled up in his puffy red scarf and grabbed his handmade wooden sled. On the way to the snowy hill, he met Ruby Rabbit, who wore 3 scarves and earmuffs shaped like strawberries. Race you to the top, she giggled. Benny huffed, but you've got longer legs. I bounce faster, Ruby winked and hopped ahead. At the top of Fernwood Hill, animals were already gathered. Foxes with toboggans, porcupines with saucers, and a very determined mole with a snow shovel. Last one down is a frosty frog, Benny shouted. He and Ruby hopped onto their sleds and whooshed down the hill, snow flying in all directions. Ruby zigzagged past a pine tree. Benny spun in a wide circle before plopping into a snowdrift. They laughed and rolled over into the soft snow. But then, whoosh! Something zipped past them in a blur of orange and brown, leaving a sparkling trail of snow behind. Did you see that? Ruby sat up. Was that a squirrel? Benny asked, blinking. A moment later, the blur came back, this time with a loop-the-loop mid-air. The animal zipped up a snowbank and launched off, landing perfectly in the center of the hill. Standing proudly was Squeaky Squirrel, wearing goggles and riding a banana-shaped sled with tiny rockets on the back. "Behold," he shouted, "the Sledster 3000. Everyone gathered around in awe. "Did you build that?" Ruby asked. "With turbo acorn boosters," Squeaky declared. "Fastest sled in the forest." Benny scratched his head. "But it's shaped like a banana." "That's for aerodynamics," Squeaky grinned. Squeaky zoomed off again, turning the snowy hill into his personal racetrack. Everyone watched, amazed, and maybe a little jealous. Ruby elbowed Benny. "We can build something better." Benny raised an eyebrow. "We can?" She nodded firmly. "Let's invent the Snow Zoomer Supreme." They spent the afternoon gathering supplies, sled pieces, pine cones for steering, and leftover ribbon for flair. Benny added old soup pot lids as snow brakes. Ruby attached ski poles for balance. At last they stood back and admired their wild, clunky creation. "It's unique," Benny said. "Let's test it," Ruby shouted. They dragged it to the top of the hill. Squeaky zoomed past, waving. "Need a tow?" Ruby stuck out her tongue. "We'll fly past you." They climbed aboard. Ruby grabbed the rope reins. Benny squeezed behind her. "Ready?" she asked. "Huh, never," Benny yelled, but off they went. At first, the Snow Zoomer Supreme sputtered and squeaked. Then it wobbled. Then, zoom! It picked up speed. They careened down the hill, bouncing over snow mounds, spinning past trees, and finally, just as they passed Squeaky, launching off a bump and soaring through the air. "Ah!" they both screamed. They landed with a thump into a snowbank. When they popped out, the forest animals were cheering. Squeaky jogged over. "That was amazing." Benny blinked. "It was?" Ruby brushed snow from her ears. "We totally meant to do that." Squeaky pointed to their sled. "Your banana sled beats mine in style." They all laughed, and Squeaky offered a high five with his mittened paw. "Want to combine our designs?" he asked. "A turbo banana-zooming hybrid sled?" Benny and Ruby looked at each other. "Absolutely." That evening, under twinkling stars, the 3 friends worked together, building the silliest, fastest, and most fun sled the forest had ever seen. And from that day on, whenever snow fell in Fernwood Forest, animals would gather on Fernwood Hill. Not just to sled, but to see what new surprises Benny, Ruby, and Squeaky would zoom down with next.